The fashionable restaurant had many expensive cars parked near the entrance, which indicated that the celebration was in full swing. Some of the guests invited to the wedding went outside to get some fresh air and take a break from the loud music. At that moment, a gray-haired, hunched-over old man slowly approached the restaurant from the parking lot. At first, the security guards standing at the entrance took the stranger for a homeless person, but when he started walking straight towards them, they visibly tensed up. "Is Kate Martin's wedding ceremony here?" the old man asked cautiously. After the stranger's words, the guards looked at each other in surprise, and one of them said, "Yes, sir, you have the right place. But there's a guest list, so you can't get in unless you're on it." "I'm sorry, but could you maybe make an exception? I really need to get inside," the old man asked hopefully. The guards laughed out loud in response, unsuccessfully trying to get a hold of themselves. "We value our work too much to let all kinds of homeless people into the restaurant. Now, if your name is on the list, then you are welcome to come inside," one of the guards answered. "My name is Ronald Martin," the old man answered quietly and looked expectantly at the men dressed in identical suits. Of course, it was foolish to hope that his name would be on the guest list. Realizing that he couldn't get into the restaurant past the vigilant security, Mr. Martin stepped aside and started thinking. Tears welled up in the old man's eyes because he couldn't get in to see his daughter. Knowing that standing at the entrance, he would never be able to carry out his plan, Ronald Martin asked the guards to ask his daughter, Kate, to step outside. Unfortunately, the young guards reacted to his request with indifferent contempt, which did not bring the old man any closer to his goal. Instead of helping the father of the bride, the guards openly ridiculed him in front of several dozens of guests. Moreover, looking at his old-fashioned suit made Mr. Martin feel his poverty with particular acuteness. The old man saw how well the rich wedding guests were dressed. Fortunately, after being outside for half an hour, the guards went inside because the caterers needed some urgent help. Realizing that it was probably his only chance to get inside, Ronald Martin carefully opened the door and entered the restaurant. But before the old man had time to take even a couple of steps, he was stopped by a woman in a satin dress with a boutonniere pinned to her chest. "What are you doing here, mister? You will scare away all the guests with your appearance. Where did you even get this suit? Did you borrow it from a scarecrow?" the woman asked mockingly. Mr. Martin flinched visibly in response and tried to pull himself together as he started feeling very agitated. "Excuse me, ma'am, but I'm the father of the bride, and I really need to get inside to see her," the old man said with despair in his voice. Needless to say, the face of the woman standing in front of him changed immediately. "What? How dare you even speak of my daughter-in-law, you vile liar? What did you think, that you'd get a free meal here? Couldn't you have come up with a better lie, or just asked for food? I would have given you leftovers from the kitchen," the woman answered, raising her voice. The man felt so ashamed that he covered his face with his hands and started crying silently, leaning his back against the wall. The old man was unbearably hurt by the fact that he couldn't see his daughter on her wedding day, especially since he hadn't seen her for 20 years. In the meantime, the father of the groom joined his wife, and now the couple continued to ridicule the old man together. Fortunately, at that moment, several young people came out of the celebration hall and distracted the attention of the rich in-laws with their loud conversation. Mr. Martin saw it as an opportunity to get into the celebration, the echoes of which were heard even in the foyer. Thus, in less than 5 minutes, the old man got into the celebration hall and got quickly lost in the crowd. Mr. Martin walked around looking for the bride, but she was extremely difficult to find among all the dancing of the young people. Suddenly, the old man came up with a desperate idea, and to implement it, he had to go on stage and take the mic from the entertainer. Only a few of the guests noticed as the gray-haired stranger came up on stage. Then he quickly checked the microphone and began to sing. The bewitching sound of his voice made the guests freeze in place, and then, as if by magic, they all turned their gaze to the stage. Ronald Martin continued to sing, trying to ignore the tears streaming down his cheeks. None of the attendees knew the words of this simple song, and only the face of the bride immediately lit up with understanding. "Daddy!" exclaimed Kate and rushed to the stage, pushing her way through the rows of dancers. The truth was that the old man was singing the song that Kate loved very much back when she was just a 5-year-old child. Its words were forever imprinted in the memory of the young woman who was all grown up now and getting married. Seeing his daughter, Mr. Martin couldn't hold back the tears that gave him at least some relief and hope. "I knew that someday you'd definitely find me, Daddy," Kate whispered, hugging the frail old man. In response to his daughter's words, Ronald Martin pulled away for a moment and then reached into his jacket pocket. Then, smiling mysteriously, the old man took out an oblong, velvet-lined box and handed it to his daughter. Burning with impatience, Kate carefully opened it, and to her great surprise, saw an old handmade necklace framed with a scattering of diamonds and sapphires. "This is our family heirloom. It belonged to your late mother and was passed down from generation to generation." Seeing the silent question in Kate's eyes, Mr. Martin explained. On this important occasion, the old man did not forget about the groom either, handing him an equally valuable wristwatch. Getting to witness this touching scene caused every single one of the guests to shed a tear. And even the guards, who refused to let the old man in just half an hour ago, felt uncomfortable and hurried to disappear out of sight. The groom's parents were also imbued with respect for Mr. Martin, who, although he was poorly dressed, gave the newlyweds such valuable gifts. "Forgive me, daughter, that I couldn't find you for so long. You look so much like your mother," whispered Ronald Martin through tears. The elderly man knew that he should have made every effort to prevent the 20-year-long separation. Few of the wedding guests knew that the sad story of the old man started in one of the small towns in Tennessee. Ronald Martin and his wife, Rebecca, were well over 40 when little Kate was born. The little baby immediately brought many good and bad changes in their lives. Sadly, the couple couldn't have children for a long time, and when it did happen, their joy knew no bounds. Unfortunately, the 45-year-old Rebecca only had enough strength in her to conceive and bear the child. But when the long-awaited moment of childbirth came, the unfortunate woman got internal bleeding, which the obstetricians could not stop. The moment Ronald Martin was informed of his wife's death, he couldn't think of anything else. Thus, by the evil twist of fate, the unfortunate widower found himself alone with his little daughter. Since Ronald Martin loved his late wife very much, he didn't feel that he could remarry. For the first time in 5 years, the man sincerely believed that he could raise his daughter alone. Working a low-paying job, Ronald Martin was devastated to realize that he wasn't earning nearly enough to raise a child. Sure, the man could have tried to find a better job, but then he simply wouldn't have enough time to raise his daughter. Faced with the terrible dilemma, Ronald Martin didn't even realize when he fell into a terrible depression, which prompted him to make a drastic decision. The fact was that some friends had long been advising him to enlist as a worker in one of the gold mining companies in Alaska. According to them, Ronald could easily improve his deplorable financial situation in a relatively short time. The lonely widower didn't hesitate long. The only problem was that Ronald didn't have anyone to look after his daughter while he'd be away. It was then that Mr. Martin decided to leave Kate at an orphanage for a little while. Sure, the man's heart was breaking at the time, but he didn't see any way out of this situation. Unfortunately, Ronald had virtually no relatives, and therefore he had no choice but to leave his daughter at an orphanage. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done. "I will come back for you, I promise." The father said goodbye and set off on his journey to the lands of Alaska. Unfortunately, life in the land of snow and frost was not as easy as ordinary people thought it was. The plan was to stay there for 1 year, but instead, Ronald had to stay in this cold region for 5 long years. But the main tragedy awaited him after his return. The fact was that the 10-year-old Kate was having some health issues and was thus transferred to a different orphanage, located in the area with a milder oceanic climate. Of course, Ronald Martin repeatedly tried to find his daughter, but each time he ran into hostility, frozen in the eyes of the orphanage staff. It was your decision to abandon your daughter. Moreover, you're a single father with a mental disorder. There is no way we could tell you the whereabouts of the girl. The staff answered and shrugged indifferently. After such conversations, Ronald Martin usually got even more upset and depressed, which prompted him to unsuccessfully look for a solution at the bottom of a bottle. The man didn't even realize when days that looked exactly the same turned into 20 years. Ultimately, Ronald Martin reluctantly accepted the fact that he had lost his daughter forever. And most likely, if it weren't for the wedding notice, which he accidentally came across on the internet, the old man would still be living in complete ignorance about the fate of his daughter. However, when he saw the fate of Kate Martin in the photo, the man realized that there could be no mistake. It was then that he went to the restaurant where his only daughter was to celebrate the most important day of her life. After listening to her father's confused confession, Kate pulled him in for a long hug. Of course, deep down inside, the woman had forgiven him a long time ago and didn't hold a grudge at her unfortunate father. Kate realized that the employees of the orphanage deliberately got in her father's way in order to prevent any possible complications in the girl's life. But now, when Kate's father had finally found her, and on her wedding day too, she was sure that she would never let him leave her again and would do everything so that their family would be complete and happy.